Two fashionistas fight to wear the same luxury brand first. Only one ends up exposed in front of millions. The night was heavy with anticipation. Two rising fashion stars, each radiant, bold, and endlessly competitive, were set to collide in ways neither could have predicted. It wasn't friendship that bound them, but a silent war for supremacy, whispered through sharp glances and measured smiles. Their battleground, not a runway, not a magazine cover, but a single outfit crafted by one of the world's most exclusive designers. Whoever wore it first would dominate the headlines, the cameras, and the hearts of millions. That was the prize. That was the danger. The rivalry didn't begin with the outfit. It was older, rooted in months of competing for the same brand endorsements, the same magazine shoots, and the same high-profile events. They orbited the same world, yet neither could accept being second. Every handshake masked claws, every hug disguised envy. But this time the competition had taken a sharper edge. A single masterpiece, a gown whispered about in the fashion underworld, was at stake. It wasn't just clothing, it was a crown. The designer was known for releasing only one of each creation, never duplicated, never copied. To wear one meant instant immortality in fashion history. Both women had heard the same rumor. The next creation was ready, a garment so daring it would break the internet in hours. Neither could risk letting the other touch it first. Behind the glimmer of polite social media posts, plans were already forming, each influencer preparing for war. A cryptic message arrived in each of their inboxes, an invitation to the private unveiling of the gown. Only one of them would leave wearing it. But the message was deliberately vague, hinting at secrecy, mystery, and danger. They both swore to keep their plans silent, yet whispers of betrayal were already circling in their minds. Trust had no place in their rivalry. Suspicion, however, was a constant companion. The first strike came subtly. One influencer found her stylist suddenly unavailable, her fittings mysteriously cancelled. Photos of her in last season's designs leaked online. She knew immediately who was behind it. The war had begun. To lose now was not an option. It would mean irrelevance, humiliation, and defeat in a world that forgot losers within hours. Every step toward the designer's unveiling felt like navigating a battlefield. Rumors were spread. False invitations were planted. Fake paparazzi sightings were staged to lure the rival into the wrong place. It was more than a competition now. It was espionage. Yet neither woman realized that the designer himself was watching, taking notes, and waiting for the perfect moment to expose them both. When they finally crossed paths at a rooftop event, their confrontation was silent but deafening. Eyes locked, smiles never reached their eyes. Every camera captured their feigned friendship, but anyone who looked closely could see the sparks of hatred, the weight of unspoken threats. Both left that night knowing one truth: only one of them would survive this rivalry intact. The gown wasn't just fabric. It was temptation woven into threads. Whispers claimed it shimmered differently under every light, that its colors shifted with movement, that it was designed to reveal more than it concealed. For an influencer, it was irresistible. The temptation was more than beauty, it was legacy. Whoever wore it first wouldn't just win, they'd erase the other entirely. As the unveiling neared, one influencer planted hidden cameras, ready to capture her rival's humiliation. The other bribed staff, securing her access to the dressing room before anyone else. Both were preparing for the same moment, each blind to the fact that their desperation was being orchestrated by forces they couldn't control. The designer's invitation had been more than a promise, it had been bait. The night arrived. The city glowed with flashing lights and velvet ropes. Journalists gathered, influencers posed, and cameras clicked endlessly. Inside, the gown awaited, resting under a spotlight like a crown jewel. The air was thick with tension. Every smile was a lie, every whisper was a dagger. And somewhere in the crowd, one of them was moments away from a devastating mistake. She moved first, gracefully, confidently, slipping into the private chamber where the gown awaited. Her hands trembled as she touched the fabric, feeling the weight of victory already pressing against her skin. When she emerged, the room gasped. The gown clung to her frame, shimmering like liquid silver, a perfect blend of elegance and daring allure. Cameras snapped furiously, capturing what seemed to be her ultimate triumph. Her rival froze, her jaw tightening, realizing defeat had come quicker than expected. But victory was short-lived. Within seconds, the fabric shifted strangely under the heat of the lights. What had seemed flawless now betrayed her. It seemed stretched, its reflective design revealing more of her body than she ever intended. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers to laughter. The crowd no longer admired, they gawked. What had begun as her coronation was now her exposure, both literal and metaphorical. She realized too late that the gown was not designed to glorify but to humiliate. The downfall unfolded in real time, streamed across every platform within minutes. Phones rose like weapons, capturing every angle, every mortifying detail. Millions who hadn't been in the room witnessed the collapse from their screens. The comments flooded instantly. Mockery, memes, cruel jokes that tore into her dignity. What should have been an immortalized fashion moment had instead become an unending scandal. Her rival seized the moment, slipping into character flawlessly. She posed near the chaos, her expression carefully molded into one of sympathy, yet her eyes betrayed a glimmer of satisfaction. The cameras adored her in contrast to the disaster unraveling beside her. She hadn't touched the gown, yet somehow she had become the winner. And the humiliated influencer, once the darling of luxury brands, was reduced to a punchline, her body language stiff, her face pale under the flashing storm of lights. The world didn't just watch. It judged, shared, and magnified the disaster until it could no longer be contained. When the dust settled, the truth began to leak. Whispers spread that the designer had orchestrated everything. The gown was never intended as a gift, nor as a symbol of beauty. It had been a trap, a carefully crafted spectacle meant to expose the vanity and desperation of those who wore it. The material had been designed to betray under bright lights, transforming elegance into scandal. The designer's words later confirmed this. Fashion is not about clothing, it is about truth. By manipulating ambition, he had crafted the greatest runway performance of all, a public unmasking. Both women, despite their efforts, had fallen into his design. One was stripped physically, the other morally. The world applauded the designer's genius, but for the two rivals, the revelation was devastating. They had been pawns in a show much larger than themselves. In their hunger for fame, they had underestimated the one person who controlled the stage from the shadows. The influencer who had worn the gown disappeared almost overnight. Her social media went dark, her endorsements evaporated, and her name became synonymous with humiliation. Every attempt to rise again was drowned out by ridicule. She became a ghost in the very world she once dominated. Meanwhile, her rival basked in temporary success. Magazine covers, interviews, and sponsorships flooded in. But the shine faded quickly. Screenshots began to leak, messages suggesting her involvement in sabotage, whispers that she had orchestrated her rival's downfall. Soon she too was under fire. Brands pulled away cautiously, unwilling to be tied to scandal. The same audience that once adored her began to doubt her authenticity. What had seemed like victory was hollow, fragile, and slipping away. Both women found themselves cornered by the same ruthless truth. In the age of endless exposure, no reputation was safe. Desperation turned the women against each other more openly than ever. Instead of hiding their rivalry, they paraded it in interviews, leaking stories about one another, dragging personal secrets into the spotlight. Social media turned their feud into entertainment, dissecting every word, every post, every photo. What once was a private battle for dominance had now become a public circus. The rival who had seemingly won lost her control over the narrative when evidence of manipulation surfaced. The other, despite her humiliation, found sympathy among certain groups who framed her as the true victim, yet neither truly gained ground. Their feud became their brand, overshadowing their achievements, their style, and even their personalities. The gown, once the centerpiece, was forgotten. Their lives had become the spectacle, and the world had chosen sides, none of them favorable. Alone in her apartment, the defeated influencer replayed the unveiling over and over again. The lights, the gasps, the laughter, each moment was etched into her memory like a scar. She scrolled through endless videos of her humiliation, each replay cutting deeper than the last. Regret weighed heavily on her. She realized it wasn't just her rival who had destroyed her, it was her own blind ambition, her desperation to win at any cost. The more she thought about it, the more she saw how easily she had walked into the designer's trap. She had chosen pride over caution, vanity over reason. Silence became her only refuge. Days turned into weeks as she stayed hidden, her phone abandoned, her mirrors covered. For the first time, she questioned not just her career, but her identity. Without fame, without the spotlight, who was she? The regret was heavier than any crown she had once hoped to wear. For the other influencer, the taste of victory was bittersweet. At first, she was showered with attention, hailed as the face of resilience. But as the tide of public opinion shifted, admiration soured into suspicion. Every smile she posted online was dissected. Every outfit she wore criticized for arrogance. Fans accused her of exploiting her rival's downfall. Endorsements began to hesitate. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves, afraid of the backlash attached to her name. She had won the battle, but the war left her with nothing but hollow applause and fake admiration. In private, she admitted to herself that the gown had not crowned her, it had cursed her. She lived in constant fear that her secrets, her schemes, her manipulations would surface fully. The victory she had longed for turned into chains that bound her tighter with every passing day. The gown was never seen again. Rumors said it had been destroyed. Others claimed it was locked in a private vault. Regardless, its legacy endured, not as a masterpiece, but as a weapon. The designer was hailed as a genius, celebrated for exposing the rotten core of influencer culture. Interviews portrayed him as an artist who dared to hold a mirror to society's obsession with fame. His brand skyrocketed, his name etched into history. To him, the gown was never about beauty, it was about stripping illusions. Through it, he had turned ambition into theater, vanity into a cautionary tale, and the downfall of two ambitious women into art. He had not merely created a dress, he had created a story that no one would forget. For the women, however, he left behind scars, their dreams shattered in the wake of his masterpiece. The two influencers became living warnings in the industry. They were no longer remembered for their talent, their style, or their charisma, but for their scandal. Rising stars whispered their names with dread. Mentors used their downfall as cautionary tales. Fame, they had shown, was fragile. An empire built on glass that could shatter with a single strike. One gown, one night, one mistake was all it had taken to unravel everything. Their story spread beyond fashion, seeping into discussions about ambition, pride, and the hunger for validation. Even those outside the world of luxury brands found the tale haunting. It wasn't just about two rivals. It was about anyone who had ever chased glory without caution. Fame, they learned too late, devoured more than it ever gave. The saga of the gown lived on like folklore in the fashion world. Every aspiring influencer knew the story, every designer whispered about the trap that exposed the truth. The warning was simple yet unforgettable. In a world where cameras never blink, ambition must be tempered with caution. The gown promised immortality, but it delivered infamy. It turned queens into jesters, dreams into ashes. For those who heard the tale, the message was chilling. Anyone could fall, no matter how bright they burned. The cameras loved you only until they didn't. And once they turned against you, there was no escape. The story of the two rivals wasn't just about fashion. It was about human frailty, pride, and the cruel hunger of the spotlight. And so, to all who dared to step into that glittering world, beware, because exposure is inevitable. If you enjoyed this suspenseful story of ambition, betrayal, and downfall, make sure to subscribe for more unforgettable tales.